to Raunchy Power Hour, a book club for discussing romance from the erotic to the erroneous. As always, this is an explicit podcast and contains strong language, adult themes, and sexual content. If you are sensitive to these things, we urge you calmly but sincerely to turn off your radio now. This month, we are reading Barbarian Alien by Ruby Dixon. This is part 1 of Barbarian Alien. This podcast will contain spoilers through chapter 3 or part 3. If you want to read along with us, stop listening now. It's okay. We'll wait for you to come back. This book contains themes of dubious consent, grief and loss, kidnapping, and the mention of rape. You have been warned. I'm your producer, Ashlyn.
I'm your host, Sydney.
And I am your anatomically convenient spur that is located right above your alien boyfriend's large hunking penis.
Now get ready to get raunchy.
Hey, Cindy.
Hey, Lauren.
I have a question to ask you.
A question? What is it?
Yes. What has been your favorite memory from the past year of the Raunchy Power Hour podcast?
My favorite thing. Honestly, I think it was the day we found out we got blocked by E.L. James. I think that was the highlight of my podcasting career so far. What about you, Lauren? What has been your favorite memory from the past year of Raunchy Power Hour?
That was a really good choice. As an aside, we are really hitting a full circle moment with this episode because when we found out we were blocked by none other than E.L. James herself, I was in the parking lot of a auto body shop getting my car repaired. And today I brought my car to that same auto body shop because my life is falling apart. Yeah. We're really living life here. I think my favorite memory is when I got the drunkest I have been since leaving undergrad, when we read the My Immortal fan fiction and just loose lips, saying things that will probably haunt me on job applications and grad school applications down the road. But it was a good time.
Oh, yeah.
YOLO, as the kids say.
And things live on the internet forever, so I'm glad to know that this is my legacy.
I actually have a follow-up question, if you will humor me.
Oh, a follow-up question. I'm excited.
Yes. Among your favorite memories and fondest moments from this past year that we've been recording partners, did you ever think we would return to the inhospitable land of Not Hoth?
I'll be honest, I had a sneaking suspicion since, this is a series. And I was like, I feel like we can't just read the first one. I feel like we have to continue and know what happens to these characters. And I'm honestly kind of glad we did return to it. I'm not happy about the planet still being called Not Hoth, but whatever.
I feel the same. Did y'all have to drag me kicking and screaming to read the second? Yeah, but
yeah, we
that's
did.
all under the bridge. But I think we've changed as people. I'd like to think we have blossomed. I'd like to think we really upped our game here, and maybe that factors into the quality of enjoyment we got from this book. Would you agree?
I would 100% agree, because on top of it, too, we actually don't feel scared to say the word dick on our podcast.
True.
We did when we first recorded.
Do you remember some of the substitute words we would use for sex and penis?
Ashlyn does.
Yes, Ashlyn, please help me out, because I think that whole episode was a blur.
Oh, let's see. Pull up my little transcript here.
Did we say do the nasty at any point? That feels vaguely familiar.
We said a lot of things. Sydney, did you know that you referenced Mothman's ass in the first minute and a half of our first podcast episode ever?
You know what? I didn't, but it just bodes well for how much I love Mothman and for the book I made you guys read later that year.
Yeah, we call that foreshadowing, homies. That was some primetime foreshadowing.
Very, very much so.
We're very afraid to say the word porn, apparently. We use the word erotica a lot.
And now I feel like we barely say the word erotica. We just go smut, porn.
Yeah, smut, porn, dick and balls, vagina, punini. Punini is my favorite word to describe a vagina, and I don't know why. And I can't explain it. I will say, from what I've heard from some of our listeners, our reoccurring listeners, for recommended podcasts that they get due to listening to ours, they get just a lot of just regular sex like advice podcasts.
Oh, like in the recommended feed? Since you listen to the RPH podcast, maybe you really suck at sex and have bad examples of it.
Sorry, Mom, for ruining your Spotify feed.
Is it your mom that said that?
In our first 2 episodes, how many times do you think we use the word dick?
1.
I'll be optimistic. I'll say 3. Twice.
Damn! And let me guess, it was prefaced with a God, fine. I'll just say it. Dick.
Yeah. Probably. We were like blushing virgins.
Oh my God. Is that a Venus?
Oh my God. Well, Lauren, I just want to say it's been a great year of recording this with you, and I honestly kind of can't believe that we've kept this up. In a way of like, I've always wanted to kind of like do something like this, I guess. And I'm really glad I'm doing it with 2 of my best friends. And it's been a lot of fun, and I'm glad to share that with you guys. And now we're able to share it with our listeners.
That's a lot more wholesome than this like awful cesspool of a podcast deserves, but I appreciate it.
I mean, we get to talk about romance. We get to talk about the things we love, we hate, from the erotic to the erroneous. And I mean, a lot of people do talk about erotica in books and talk about romance in general, but I feel like, I mean, I won't say we reinvented the wheel or anything, but I like that we go and explore whatever our heart's content is and just share it with the world and be like, yep, we look stupid doing this, but we're having fun. So why not?
I think as people that did not really read erotica or smut prior to this podcast, I also like want to commend us, patting myself on the back as well, of just taking this leap of faith and delving into something that is probably not very conventionally, or socially like accepted to talk about on a platform like this. And again, like you said, very well phrased, we're not reinventing the wheel. We recognize there are a whole bunch of other like corners of the internet and podcasts included that probably touch on erotica and smut. But I think, especially from our backgrounds and the level and the degree to which we have grown since we have started this in the past year, really, I think speaks volumes. And it has become so much fun. And I've really enjoyed it. And while I can't honestly say that I love the erotica genre and would pick it up in my spare time, I do find enjoyment through it because of this podcast and because I get to hang out with you two. So I appreciate you as well.
Aww. Do you want to go talk about blue alien sticks now?
Yeah. One last question for you, though. What, obviously within the parameters obviously within the parameters of what you're comfortable sharing on this podcast, how have you changed in the past year since we last recorded an Ice Planet Barbarians book? Anything you care to share?
I mean, I've just become more comfortable expressing how I feel. I'm not as scared to say something stupid or dumb that will last on the internet forever. Like, I'm still cautious because I never want to like accidentally offend people or make fun of someone and them hurt by my comments. But I've just become more comfortable talking about the romance genre and erotica in general, and it's just been a lot of fun. And I've been able to like express myself more through like doing all of our silly social media posts and all of that. So I think that's really what has changed for me as your co-host on Raunchy Power Hour. But what about you in the last year? What do you think how you have changed?
I thought, honestly, like, obviously I knew you were going to ask me that same question. I was not as prepared as I thought I was. I think by and large, I started this podcast in a not very great mental health spot. Not to say that I was like the lowest I'd ever been, but going through both a lot of internal and external struggles that were occurring at the beginning of last year. And having this podcast initially start off as being just like an occasional refuge that I got, an excuse to hang out with friends, eventually turned into something once, both my internal and external circumstances improved, that I really felt as a means of not only self-expression, but as an outlet for like, I think just really exploring and hamming up that part of myself that I've always kept hidden for so long. Not to say that I'm like, oh my God, Hannah Montana, slutty, whatever my alter ego is. But like, I think I was always the kid that read lemons and lime fan fiction. I always, participated in a lot of horrendous and probably shameful fandom cultures all my life. And it was something that I've kept hidden and didn't really talk about. And then, of course, the pandemic hit and things changed. I was like, oh, fuck it. We're a little more open. But I think this podcast in particular has opened those doors for me to be a little bit more of myself. Maybe too much at times, I would argue. But it's been an experience with authenticity that I really enjoy and will probably regret one day. But for now, I'm really grateful for.
Aww.
Look at us being sappy.
So cute. So sweet.
So wholesome. Unlike the holes that were filled in not.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Well, listeners, welcome back to the second book in the Ice Planet Barbarian series, Barbarian Alien by Ruby Dixon.
Yay!
Woo! We're back. This is also our first sequel to a book we've read, so that's kind of cool. And here is your general info for everyone. So we kind of went over most of the basics in Ice Planet Barbarian 1, but you don't have to go listen to our first episode. We know it's not great audio-wise. But originally, the book series went viral in 2021 due to TikTok, and that was when all of these books became popular and everyone started reading them again. However, Barbarian Alien was originally published in 2015 alongside Ice Planet Barbarian. On Goodreads, it has an average rating of 3.77 out of 72,666 reviews. And on Storygraph, it has an average rating of 3.55 out of 14,446 reviews. So some more backup information that you need for Barbarian Alien is that the new version release, which is what we all read, was released in 2021. And interestingly enough, the the original series also was completed in 2021 because yes, there are 2 other series with these books. I just found that out. And
I'm just gonna put it out here now. No, boundaries will not be crossed. I'm not reading those series.
but Lauren, apparently they're like beach episodes.
What does that mean?
Apparently there's a beach somewhere on Nonhoff. I don't know. It's called something. I don't remember. Anyway.
You mean to tell me there's an anime style beach episode with spurs and blue men and women that run around being like, tee-hee, penis, cooey?
I mean, I don't know because I haven't read them, but maybe something I pick up later.
Mark my words, listeners. If you ever hear us reviewing that book in the podcast, know that it was against my will and that cruel and unusual punishment has been enacted to get me there. I rest my case.
It'll be my big favor I ask of you. Anyway, on June 13th of 2021, Ice Planet Barbarian was the 5th most sold book on Amazon, and Barbarian Alien was 11th. So I just found that interesting just to note, be like, oh yeah, on Amazon on June 13th, 2021. That's when those books were at the highest. And apparently a bunch of booksellers were ramping up and like demanding more books because they were being sold out so quickly.
Actually, that makes me curious. Ashlyn, can you look up what year like the 50 Shades of Grey movies were coming out? Because I'm curious of like that, if that lines up at all with that timeline of like resurgence of and popularization of smut.
The first movie came out in 2015, followed by the second in 2017 and the third in 2018.
Universe crossovers.
Horny.
Are the timelines converging?
No, please. And now we've got our character list. We've got Liv, who is can be described as sassy, stubborn, and southern. We've got Rahosh, which is also stubborn, softy. Yep, that's all I got for him. He doesn't get 3; he only gets 2. Then we've got Georgie, who is, as many of you know, was the main female love interest in the first Ice Planet Barbarian book. And then we have Bechtel, who is her mate and was the main love interest from the first book. Also, I wrote here, Georgie, leader, ? I don't know why. And then for Bechtel, I went leader. Makes sense.
True.
Like, Georgie does not make sense, but whatever. And then we have Ahako. Ahako?
Yeah, that's how I've been saying it.
Yeah. Okay. And we have Hayden, which I thought that was funny that a barbarian was named Hayden.
Dude, I'm from Alpha Kappa Spur. My name is Hayden.
Dude, I'm from Sakui, and like, do you want a Rosh?
Do you want a Hoth Light? Fucking sick.
But they're both young, unmated Sakui men. And honestly, I didn't write down anybody else's name except for Kira. And if listeners remember, Kira is also from the first book. All of the women are referenced in the first book, except the 6 new ladies who come in. But Kira is the one who had the earpiece and could understand the green men, the little green men.
Oh yeah, the Marvin the Martians that abducted these women.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, that's really all the characters you need to know. I mean, there's a lot of women, and there are a lot of names thrown around that we just aren't going to mention. but we already went over trigger warnings in the introduction to the podcast. But hey, everyone, I've got another tab index because I annotated my book. So for the first one, we do just have general trigger warning, like things I thought would be triggering to some people. We have one tab, which was added, which is sexy. Like, la la. That was very well done. We have random space racism, unneeded Star Wars reference, a moment where I laughed out loud, like something was like, okay, that was actually funny. But then we have the LOL eye roll moment, which was not meant to be funny, but I thought it was funny because of some way it was written. And then we have the, aw, that was kind of cute.
Okay. So by and large, it sounds like your tabs this time around are like skewed towards the positive.
They are, but I won't reveal later what my rating is.
Secrecy.
Ooh, a secret. I have a secret. Ooh. I like it. All right. Well, with that, are we ready to jump into chapter 1?
Let's fucking do it. I'm ready to actually be able to talk about this book series and say penis and vagina. You know?
I'm so excited to be able to say. All right. Well, going into chapter 1, we open with Liz's POV. So I will say this before we begin. I had to go back and reread all of part 1. But when I first started reading it, because I started reading it just like, get a feel for the tabs. But I accidentally read too far and I forgot to take notes. So I just want to point that out before we even jump in.
Hey, you already do better than me. It's almost like a 50-50 coin toss of like whether I take notes at all. So yeah. Good job.
And this time around you didn't. You're just leaning on Ashlyn's.
Hey, blame Ruby Dixon. She got me hot and bothered in the sheets, and I didn't feel like picking up a pen. Okay.
Hey, yo.
Hey, ho.
So, yeah, it opens up with Liz's POV, and it's rescue mission time. We are trying to get out the 6 other ladies who've been in the pods this entire time. And so Liz, Georgie, Kira, and one other girl is trying to get them out, and they're able to open them. The girls wake up. They're obviously freaking out. And this gives Ruby Dixon, Liz, a great reason to recap the first book for us. And so we get like a quick recap of like aliens came in and took these ladies. They're all the same age. All of that stuff, which honestly I needed because I didn't even remember. But Liz is really cranky and isn't feeling too good. And then we get the introduction to Rahosh. I'm gonna say Rahosh. I'm trying better. But he comes over and Liz is grumpy because Rahosh has decided that he is her mate. He has resonated for her. And she's not happy about it. So she's cranky and he tries to feed her and all of that. And when Liz is still explaining other things to the other girls, Liv basically says that he's grumpy / kind of ugly and how she doesn't want to be like his property, which fair enough. I get it. I will say I had one major issue with this first part of part 1. And trigger warning for mentions of rape here. I don't like that it's still included in the book. This is like my one gripe with this series is that I really don't like that inclusion. Because apparently there was a whole scene in the first book that was completely edited out with the first book when it was republished. And I just don't know why it's still included. That's just me personally.
Wait, I'm trying to recall. Did we discuss this in the first episode? Because I have no recollection of this.
We did. I believe. Ashlyn is checking our transcripts.
To the rescue. Either way, I have zero recollection of this. So
yeah. Well, the scene was removed, but there was like mentions of it. Like it kept getting brought up and like said. That's what the gray guys kept doing.
Okay, so was it like a written out description of what occurred?
I don't know.
Is that why it was removed?
I don't know, because obviously I don't want to go searching for the scene and read it. But I just don't understand why this plot point is still like kind of a part of the series if we're already taking out another scene which we feel is like too much. I'm like, just take it out altogether personally. That's just me, because I understand that there's a whole genre for like dark romance and other darker themes. I just don't feel like a fantasy book about blue aliens on a distant planet needs to include sexual assault. I believe I said that in the first episode too, but that's me. I won't get on my high horse for too long on this one. I just wanted to bring that up.
I mean, I may briefly respond, only in the sense that like I'm very public about this and like it doesn't bother me to bring it up.
You broke up.
Oh, did it not pick up?
Yeah.
Whoopsie daisy, my microphone came untwisty wisty. I need to listen. If we stick with this podcast for another year, I'm going to invest in a better microphone. This is ridiculous. But I was going to say that I will respond in the sense that like as a survivor myself, and I'm very public and comfortable speaking on that. I think I brought it up in the last episode or last Ice Planet Barbarians episode as well. It was interesting reading it from that perspective because, and I obviously do not want to speak for anyone else in a similar position as I am, but for me, I wasn't bothered by it. And it may be just like at the stage of like where I'm at in terms of like how I have dealt with things and like how I've healed and gone down that journey for myself. I will say I was more bothered by it in the first book because I think there was a much bigger like dwelling on it. And it felt like it was more present tense in real time. And I think that was an issue for me. The way it was talked about in Barbarian Alien, I was a little more comfortable with of like, it felt like an off, like, I mean, it was an off scene thing. It's like a mention from the last book. I would always say, though, obviously, like, just between us, our feelings differ. I would always put a like warning sign almost to anyone that wants to pick up this book series, just to be knowledgeable going in that these mentions are there and that it's okay. Like, and just to know sort of like your own bandwidth for handling those things and what you would like to read, because I think there's so much validity in that being bothersome to people. But I am glad to say that it did not bother me too much, which is good.
Okay.
We slay. We stand.
Okay, good. Yeah. I just, whenever I pick up a romance book, especially like if it's erotica like this, I want some escapism. So I think that's why it kind of bothered me. I'm like, I don't want to, this, like, I'm trying to escape. I'm not trying to think about the horrific actions. Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
But yeah, that's kind of all I had to say. That was like my only kind of big gripe that I had with that first part. I will say, because they mentioned a girl named Tiffany who's apparently just like really not doing good. And I just wrote "Rip Tiff," LOL.
Rip Tiff.
Tiffany. Don't know what happened. Anyway, now we are going into Rahash's point of view.
Wait, I'm so sorry. Can I bring up a gripe that I had with the first chapter?
Yes.
Can I actually bitch and moan for 5 seconds?
Do you want to bitch and moan? Go ahead, girl.
I would love to bitch and moan. I would love to. So this is going to be, without spoiling my eventual rating, the reason why this book did not rank as high for me as I wanted it to. Because I have on and off, very hot and cold frustrations with Liz's character portrayal. And in certain chapters, it's fine. It's a lot more palatable. In others, especially this very first introduction, I was already bracing myself for ooh, you're just going to be unnecessarily mean and gripey because that's how we show independence and strength in women, because there's no nuance of being nice and strong. You know what I mean? And it was during the scene where she's sitting around and like explaining to the girls that are coming out of the pod, like what happened to them. But she's explaining it in such a like, suck it up, get over it kind of way that felt so unnecessary and was only like partially justified in the sense of like, well, they didn't have to endure the things that we endured because they were unconscious this whole time. And I was like, I get it, but like, you can harbor those feelings without being a dick. Like, I don't know, but that was just my only gripe. It was a hard introduction for me to read, not having any strong recollection of her character from a year ago, if that makes sense. Like, if I feel like you read I Spin at Barbarians and then read this immediately after, it wouldn't be so bad.
I mean, I remember her being very crass and very like to the point in the first book as well. Because I remember when Georgie came in and she was just like, "Hi, we got abducted."
Tea.
So yeah.
God, I think Kira is probably the most interesting character that resonates the most with me, because I think Georgie is a damp paper towel. I'm sorry, Ruby Dixon. She's a bounty quilted towel. And yeah.
No, she's one ply. That's it. She's a one ply paper towel.
She is the hotel bathroom refills of toilet paper that you request when you run out, and it's like literally sandpaper on your butthole. And
oh my God,
that's what it is.
Love that for you. Yeah, I can agree, because Georgie literally gave us nothing. No personality, no background, nothing.
It's giving
and then Liz,
nothing.
It's giving nothing. But with Liz, at least we get, I did write down in the next, I think chapter 3, I was like, oh, I kind of like Liz. But it's only because she actually has a character and she's not Georgie.
Right. I hard agree with that, because like I said, in certain chapters I was very much like, ugh, I kind of got the ick. But in other chapters I was like, wow, refreshing. She has thoughts and opinions and jokes that rarely land. But
you know what? Honestly, I was kind of the same, and I think I realized why. And it's because there's some inconsistency in her characterization where she is very strong-willed and like very stubborn at times, and then she's just very forgiving and like moves forward very quickly.
Yes, I picked up on the same thing.
And I think we both hate it because it's like, Georgie, not again.
No. Yeah.
Having wartime flashbacks. Anyway, chapter 2. We're in Roche's POV, and so he has resonated with Liz. I didn't know that they were able to hide it, because he's like keeps saying he's hiding it from the others, and I was like, okay, that's interesting. So Rahash, he wants to like help Liz, but he got the English, he got the Google Translator ship thing, and he can understand English. If you don't remember that from the first book, there is a random spaceship that landed on the planet, and then that is how they fixed their language barrier, is they got Google translated.
It's a weird plot convenience thing, but we digress.
Yeah. But he can understand Liv, and she doesn't know that he can understand him. So he's like kind of hurt by her comments, and he says something along the lines of like, well, if she hates me, like, it's fine, we're mates. Like, it's just going to happen because I resonated for her and she's going to resonate for me. I will say what gave me the ick in this chapter was he mentioned that Ahako. I'm trying. I'm so hard. I'm never going to be able to get these AE names down.
No, I think you're good.
When Rahosh mentioned that he hadn't resonated with anyone and he may resonate with like an unborn child or like one of the children back at their cave system, it gave me the ick so hard. I was like, ooh.
I forgot about that. Whoops.
Yeah, it gave me the ick real hard. I was like, ooh, that's gross.
Jacob from Twilight who?
Yeah, I know, right?
Renesmee who?
Yeah.
And so Rahosh wants to help Liv, but she's stubborn. She keeps like hitting him and is like, no, put me down. I want to be my own woman. But Vectel kind of tells Rahosh to let Liv do their own thing. And like, that's just what humans do. And Vectel's like, fine. I want to help her, but she like won't let me. And he's like, Vectel's like, you just got to be delicate. Anyway, chapter 3. It's Cooey time. So now it's time for all the ladies to get their symbiote, or as Liz.
Oh my god!
I accidentally wrote down Liz as Liv throughout this entire book, apparently. So please forgive me if I keep accidentally mentioning Liv. But yeah, it's Cooey time, and if I got so sick of the cootie thing, I kept putting down.
I did too.
Every single time Liz said it.
She never once said, because she ends up like in her internal monologue calling it Cooey, like Khui, but never out loud does she ever say Cooey. She insists on calling it a cootie, and I'm like, at this point, it's deliberate. Like, just I don't know.
Space racism.
Space racism.
I will scream it from the clouds. It is space racism. And so it is Cooey time. And so they catch one of the animals that carries the Cooey. And so they're kind of like going through that process. Liz isn't grossed out by the actual killing of the animal. She's grossed out by the Cooey, like, going into the body because she sees Georgie do it. And she's like, fuck that. And she wants to run. So she does. So Rahosh like catches up to her and she's like weak. And she's like, well, maybe he's just like wanting me to stop. So he like tells her to stop and like sit down. And she does. And then he comes up and he kind of forces the Cooey onto her. And she says she'll like hate him for forever. But I will say, this is also the mention where we get the AT-AT reference. I told this to Ashlyn and Lauren off air. But I did write down, does every girl in the series need to like Star Wars? Like, damn.
Swear. I'm like, listen, hot girls cannot have watched or liked Star Wars 2. Okay?
Yeah.
Me screaming from the rooftops, like, in defense of myself.
Like, I understand that the author loves Star Wars. I get it. I do. There's too many Star Wars references, and not every girl in this series can like it. Like, oh my God. Like, I didn't know what an AT-AT was until I looked it up, and I was like, oh, right.
I think
it's the dog-looking robot thing.
For me, like, at least from what I remember, the fever dream that was Ice Planet Barbarian, I think the first book was way worse about it. So I will give this one a pass. But, you know, still not pleased with the frequency of references.
Yeah, I'm still going to put my foot down about not Hoth. I know they gave a name to the sickness that the women get or the Sakui get if they don't get a Kui. But they can't give the planet just a proper name instead of not Hoth. Like, oh my God.
If I'm blinking, but have they actually ever asked the Sakui people like what they called this planet? Was that ever discussed in Ice or IPB?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of.
Crazy that they never asked that. Crazy.
Yeah. Anyway, Liv passes out, and then we go over to the next chapter with Rahosh. So he decides. So she Oh, we do have a name. Ashlyn has found it on the fan wiki, and it is called Copen 7? Copen? Copen? Copen 6?
Maybe it's French. Maybe it's Copain.
Nope. It was the fact I couldn't read the Roman numerals because, yep, American education, you failed me. Anyway, next chapter.
They learn that? Oh, sorry. I was about to go get into the weeds of this. Do they learn this from the translator that they find, like on the ancestor ship?
No. I think the fans just probably named it.
Maybe it comes up in book, I don't know, like 705 when they're chilling on the beach. And they're like, by the way,
maybe
this planet.
Ashlyn is looking. Anyway, so Rahash decides, because Liv is passed out and he knows that he thinks that she will tell everybody that he forced her to get us a Kui and that she hates him and like all this stuff, that they will not be mates. So he decides to kidnap her and take her to a cave that is literally like his own. Like no one else goes there because he found it on his own. I did write down that Rahash kind of sounds like an incel at this point, because he mentions how he's never had a lover, he's never had a mate, he doesn't really have friends. And I was like, ooh, buddy, you are not setting yourself up for good approval. He redeems himself. He's just a virgin, guys. Don't worry, he's not an incel.
Yes. I remember my youth days when I would kidnap women to my storage and look at them and admire them from afar in hopes that they would breed with me. Yes, I too relate.
Yeah. But he also has daddy issues, apparently, which gets brought up for the first time. We're like, oh, I didn't have daddy issues in space.
I love a man with daddy issues. Is that controversial? See, I'm sorry. Sorry, I was about to go on a tirade. I think men with mommy issues, weird to me. I don't know. It's getting a little too Oedipus-y, but men with daddy issues, yes. Depending what the said daddy issue is, I could get behind it, because it infers that there's a lot of introspection and like unpacking of oneself between like within the patriarchy. And I'm like, that's sexy. Am I sick? Yeah.
Freud would have loved you.
I know.
Oh my God. Anyway.
Somebody clip that.
Floyd would have loved you. And yeah, so he takes her to his cave, and then he decides to like give her a bath because she's nasty and gross, and he he explores her body a little bit, not in like too much of a weird way, but he does watch her and undresses her and then leaves her like naked under the covers, and then he decides he needs to go hunt because she's going to be hungry when she wakes up. So Liv wakes up angry. We're back in her POV. Rahash comes back, and she resonates for him like immediately when he walks in the cave, and she's like, oh fuck, no, and is like trying to beat him up and like scratching him, and she's like trying to get the Kui out because she didn't want it, because she was a hunter. She knows like what parasites do to animals and like how you're not supposed to eat that meat. So she was freaking out, and because she's freaking out, Rahash ties her up, like puts her hands behind her back while she's like trying to fight back, and he feeds her. It's again, she's not happy. She's like, I'm not his little wife, I'm not his little cave thing. And she falls asleep and wakes up again later. This time, not tied up. she's alone, and then she gets a little horny thinking of Rahash. And then in the next chapter, we get our first little in chapter 6, we get our first little sex scene, and it was hot. Lauren, what did you think of it?
Y'all know me. You know that I am a slow burn girly. I require a certain amount of setup in my enemies to lovers story. Do I, in isolation, was the scene well written and hot? Agreed. I actually enjoyed the scene. However, if I had to apply a little bit of my fan fiction devious critique, I think for me, while it works logistically within the confines of the world building we have for like the Kui and how it literally makes you so horny that you can't even breathe type mentality, it was so jarring in a sense to literally the last chapter be like, I hate him. I hate him. He has kidnapped me. There is no autonomy in this process. This is not how human mating works. And the next chapter being like, I don't care that he's here. I'm going to look him in the eye and flick the bean. Like, that was crazy. And I feel like I get it. The Kui sensations, the spiders be tingling, right? I get it. I would like to think I would like to think I would have a little more willpower. And maybe that's just me being like, I'm not built like other girls. I think I'd be able to hold out a little bit longer.
In this bag.
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, sorry. I was going to ask you, Sid. Oh,
yeah.
I was going to turn around and ask you, do you think you would have folded this early if you had a Kui and resonated with someone that you disliked?
I mean, if the scene played out, then yes. So for context, listeners, Rahash comes back and hears noises from the cave. So he like thinks it's an animal or something. Turns out it's Liz pleasuring herself. And he's like, oh, so she doesn't want to mate, but she's going to like do that to like get some relief. Well, she won't let me touch her. Well, I'm going to touch myself. And they basically have a duo masturbation session. And here's the line that got me. It is, watch me. I silently command to her, watch me touch myself at the sight of you. And I literally like did this little silent scream. I was like,
yeah.
I was like, that is hot.
Yeah, I agree. I think, again, I'm still a little bit stuck on how fast it happened, but at the same time, this is erotica. It is not advertised as a slow burn. I'm trying to dig myself out of this perpetual hole that I have landed myself in which the only way that makes me like tickle my little toes is enemies to lovers slow burn. I'm trying to branch out. Tickle my little toes.
Okay.
Try to branch out.
Tickle your little toes. But yeah, I don't remember when the erotica happened in the first book, but I feel like it happened around this chapter. And I am also usually a slow burn girly, but the way that erotica was written, damn.
No, it's erotica. The sex scenes in this book are good, are well written. I will say that
they
out the
are
gate.
So good. Oh my god.
Is
so
Remy
chapter
Dixon
7
with partner? If so, lucky girl.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, lucky man. She comes up with an idea and she's like, okay, we're gonna go test this out.
Good for her. You know what?
Yeah.
We stand.
But yeah, chapter 7, we get some one-sided banner just coming from Liz, kind of talking and Rahash not speaking. And she's like talking to him, and then she realizes he's going to go on a hunt, and she wants to go because she hunted with her dad a lot when he was alive in Oklahoma. And this is when I started to like Liz a little bit more. And I think it's because she just actually has some agency. Like she wants to go do things and she's not like absolutely helpless, you know?
Yes.
And she's not allowing his bullshit to like get in her way because he decides to leave her there to sit and she's not happy about it. And I really like that instead of just a little lady just sitting at the cave waiting for her barbarian husband to come back, you know?
Like Georgie.
Exactly. I also wrote down, I didn't understand why she got so pissed at him, like saying like she wants to go hunt. Only because she at this point does not think he can understand her.
Yes. I had a few qualms with this like perceived language barrier that we were under for a while.
Yeah.
In that one, it felt weird that she was like speaking at him this whole time. Like, I didn't personally love it. It also was like not even just like logistically of like that being just kind of like demeaning and insulting and presuming ignorance on his behalf, but also because like certain lines, I just feel like, I feel like even certain lines of like, I can't remember the exact quote, but at one point she's basically like being like, I'm deceiving you, you big dumb alien, like looking him in the eye as she's saying that. I'm like, even if you don't think he can understand you, what is the point of saying that out loud? Like, there's genuinely no point unless it is to demean his intelligence. And that was where I had issue with that. But yes, practically speaking as well, this also was like, why are you pissed at this? Like,
yeah, Liz is space racist throughout quite a bit of this first part of the book. I did not love Liz in the first like half. She grew on me kind of as we went. Except I lost her a little bit more at the end, but that's just me. Anyway.
Tea.
So chapter 8 through 10, we can go in quick succession because literally nothing happens.
True.
But Rahosh, I'm gonna keep saying Rahosh, and I'm gonna try and keep correcting myself to Rahosh. I'm so sorry, everybody.
It's okay. The audiobook reader said rash, so like I don't think you can get worse than that.
Okay. Remind me at the end of this episode or at the end of the second one to ask you about your audio experience because I read the book and I know you listened, so I think that'd be something fun to talk about.
Sounds good.
Anyway, he goes hunting and he feeds Liz by hand and it's bonding. So they're like, I actually wrote down and I was like, it's giving Taming of the Shrew. If you do not know, that is a Shakespearean play about a man who actively, quote unquote, tames like this woman to be like the perfect wife, and no one wants to marry her, and they marry her off because they want her younger sister, but they couldn't until like after she was married. Anyway, but yeah, it was giving kind of that a little bit. Anyway, and in 9 and 10, Liz kind of plans an escape because obviously she's still like, this dude just kidnapped me, like I don't know what to do. And Rahosh can kind of sense it, that she's wanting to leave, and she decides to leave the cave to like go get stuff to make a bow, and he follows her outside. And now we're going into chapter 11. And honestly, this is kind of a repeat scene from the first book where she stumbles upon like the fish in the hot water with like the pole things. And she goes over there to like grab the thing. The fish kind of jumps out and Rahosh saves her ass and kills it. But while this is happening, she gets horny again and he eats her out. Another very, very sexy scene. Very good erotica.
I think,
and after,
if I could jump in real quick, I think the transition from like them arguing out in the snow and her being like, oh, like, you know, why are you like stalking me? And like, you know, I wasn't going to run away and like, blah, blah, like they're having a full blown disagreement in the snow. And then like he gets close enough to like help her up. And she just, without even like thinking about it, just like pulls him in to like make out
just
with
pounces.
him. I will say, I almost enjoyed the prelude to the cunnilingus like more, because it was actually so sweet, because clearly like Rahash has never kissed anyone before, and like despite Liz's like presumed ignorance of him and like not really consciously liking him, she still recognizes that this is like an important and like vulnerable moment for him, and like treats it with grace. Actually, I was very impressed. Like she didn't immediately recoil and be like, oh my God, he's a bad kisser. You know what I mean? Like, it was really sweet. She like almost sort of like behaviorally taught him how to kiss, and like still like coached him through it in a way that didn't feel demeaning. And I was like, I'm impressed, you space racist. I'm impressed.
Yeah. I was pretty surprised too. Like I enjoyed that as well. I will say she was giving mixed signals, because she kept saying like, don't do this, don't do that, when she really meant to eat me out, please. Is that's going to be clipped. I just know it. Oh,
probably.
Well. Yep. Anyway, she comes, and then he says a word. He says mine. And she's like, what? What do you mean? And this is when Liz finds out that Rahash has been able to speak English this entire time. So she's mad because she feels like he lied to her. He does bring up the point that he's like, well, you never did ask. And she's like, fair enough. But at the same time, I would be a little mad too if I didn't know someone could speak the language I was speaking this entire time and understood everything I said. But she was also being a dick the whole time. So I felt like she was more mad at her being a dick rather than lying.
I was right about to say that. Like, I don't think I would have been offended in this case if I hadn't been a jerk the whole time, because I think it's like more about the defensiveness of like, oh my God, he just like let me say all those things and like knows what I've been saying. If I feel like if I was saying like very mundane, ordinary things, I would be surprised and maybe like a little bit injured of like, oh, well, clearly he didn't trust me enough to say this or blah, blah, blah. I don't think I'd be pissed. I was like, girl, you're a bully. Yeah. Oh, no,
she was projecting. She was projecting hardcore. I will say what I liked about this chapter is she does say to, because they're having this conversation about, he's like, well, you resonated, so you're mine and you're my mate. And she's like, I just want to feel like I have control over something. Like, yeah. And she takes it back to, she goes, I was literally kidnapped from like, because of my vagina, because by the gray aliens, and now I'm on this planet and now you're wanting me, and like I just want to have some sense of control. I want to do something. I want to feel like I'm in control of this situation a little bit. And I'm like, you know what, fair enough, I understand some of her hesitance now. I didn't think about it that way.
I like that aspect of this book as well, because, and you know, obviously correct me if I'm wrong, any of you, but like I don't remember that conversation really happening in the first book. And I think when I jokingly called Georgie a damp dish rag, this is kind of what I refer to, of like, she just so willingly and quickly adapted to this massive culture shock. Like even in the first scene where her and Vectel, like when Vectel literally is like eating her out while she's asleep and like unconscious.
Yeah, when he wakes her up, eating her out.
Yeah, she so quickly is fine with it because it was good. And I'm like, and I understand that the first book was probably more about like setting up the world and more about like, oh, we got to get through X, Y, and Z. So having someone that does require a little more agency and autonomy would complicate things and drag it out more. But at the same time, this was refreshing to me because I feel like it felt more of a realistic interaction. Because, you know, I want realism in my alien space porn. You know, I want it to be accurate, real world implications.
Of course. I mean, I think there was a way that you could have a character that has more agency without giving up like the need for like explanation. Because obviously she needed explanation and things, you know.
Yeah.
But like giving her a little bit of a fight for her to be like, hey, what the fuck did you just do?
Yeah.
Because then he can explain it, and then she'd be like, oh, okay, I understand now.
Yes. And instead, she's so quick, even in this book, which I won't go into because we're saving this for the next part. But even in this book, Georgie's so like, well, I don't agree with it, but like, it's the way things are done. And because I'm a damp dishcloth, I'm just going to let it be the way that things are done. I'm like, girl, stop.
And again, that's why I don't understand why she's the leader of the women, quote unquote. Because I'm like, she's no leader. Honestly, Liz is more of a leader or Kira.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking like Kira.
They're 10 times more interesting.
I know. And Kira in particular is written as like the businessy, sensible one. Like, shouldn't she be the one calling the shots? Like,
and she was the one who had the earpiece too, but I guess she was afraid. Anyway.
Yeah.
So now into chapter 13. So funny enough, I looked at it and I can believe this is one of the longest chapters that was in this book, because it was 20 pages, and on average we were going in between 4 to 5.
Amazing.
So yeah. But here, this is where I'm calling it the Georgie effect. It's when we kind of lose some of the tension because they forgive too easily. So we're back in Liz's POV, and she's like, oh, well, I've been a dick. I haven't been very nice, and like, maybe like I didn't ask if he could speak English, and like I only assumed, and I've been cranky. And I'm like, so I wrote down like a little bit of tension is nice. Like, it's okay to have tension in a book, because then it can like lead to growth and like they can talk. So I hated that we were just kind of getting this I don't know, she just kind of forgave him too quickly, you know?
Yeah. I had similar feelings. This was the first time it came up. I've already emphasized my treacherous love for slow burns, but even in books that are not slow burns like this one, I think it is still painted as like an enemies to lovers adjacent book. And I think in order to execute that, it's going to lose its not authenticity. What's the word? Appeal? I think appeal is the word I'm looking for. Appeal. When they do forgive each other too quickly and without real reason. Like, it's not like they went through an actual like harrowing event that would have like sparked rapid change, or like, you know, I felt, you're so right. It felt like we have this. Yeah, it felt like we just had this one fleeting remark and that it changed my whole worldview of this person, also because I'm horny. And I'm like, I get it. This is a smut book. We want to get to the sex, but like, I wish it had been done more seamlessly.
I would have liked it if the forgiveness and thinking on Liz's part came from having a conversation with Rahash. I don't know how that would have been accomplished in like this part of the book, but that's like my main critique here. And I kept saying that Liz is a space racist because she kept mentioning cooties. She kept mentioning like he was ignorant and just couldn't understand her, yada yada and so forth. And this is when Rahash opens up a bit about how he has been alone this whole time, that he hasn't had a lover, he hasn't had a mate or anything, and how he has nothing. So for him to resonate with her is like a big deal for him. And she's like, shit, I've been a dick. But at the same time, like, she mentions how she's like, well, and he's like, well, we have to mate. We have to have sex. And she's like, I don't want to. And I'm like, okay, you know what? Fair that you don't want to have sex because you did get kidnapped twice now. But then she like kind of forgives him again. I'm just like, it's giving Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah, it's giving plot convenience.
Yeah, very much plot convenience.
Yeah.
Anyway, and so then they get into they make a deal, and Rahash basically agrees that Liz can come and hunt with him if they lay together like mates. We don't know 100%. We know what that means later on.
Sorry.
I know. She brings it up, remember? She gets mad at him. She's like, you're blackmailing me.
I get feelings about this chapter, but go on.
No, you can go ahead. You're obviously heated.
No, we'll get there. You keep going.
Okay,
I'm going to take a drag of my imaginary cigarette.
I was about to say, you guys so mad. You're apparently put on 20 years of smoking. And so she makes a bow and some arrows for herself for tomorrow. It's late, and they like go to bed, and they start doing a little bit of hanky panky. And we do more cunnilingus, and then she decides to reciprocate and give him a blowjob. And yep. I'm trying to think of anything else. I really can't think of anything else significant.
Oh, I got you.
Oh, okay. Okay.
All right. So this chapter is the one that it was the whole reason my rating bumped down half a star single-handedly, because here is why.
Okay.
Here is rye.
Rye? Here's rye?
Here is rye bread. The catching in the rye. Catch these hands. I think okay, let me parse through my anger. So Rahash says the line, I want to lay together as mates. Liz's immediate assumption is to have sex, and she's immediately about to be like, oh, that's not gonna happen, and then he quickly clarifies of like, I didn't mean, he doesn't say it verbatim, but he's like, I didn't mean sex. I just meant like, let's sleep next to each other, And when I read that, I was like, oh, that's really tender. And even Liz has a moment where she's like, oh my God, I feel like such a dick because I immediately assumed that he was gunning for sex. Tell me why the second they lay together, it becomes sexual. And it's funny because we talked about this. Yeah. My thing is like, we talked about this earlier of like, while I wasn't bothered by like the mentions of like what the green men did to these women, like this is actually what hit a nerve for me, because for me, it's like, you can lay together. Like if you establish this premise, and this is okay. I want to also backtrack. This is not to imply that any like consent was broken here, but for me, it's like super important as someone that's like, seeks a lot of value in romantic connection without the inherent attachment of sex. And we've already had some spicy scenes up to this point. I don't think it would have meant so much more to me, just like personally, if this scene truly did not have sex involved. Because I think when you set it up as like, oh, like I just want to be mates, and there's this clear like, oh, moment of like, yeah, we can do this. Like we do have that love for each other. And then you immediately turn it sexual. It lost me a bit. And I was like, well, okay. Like, I was like, it was a nice scene. Don't get me wrong. I thought the scene itself was like steamy, but to me, it would have been so much more appealing if they just laid together. And like, I don't think that missing that one sex scene would have detracted from this overall steaminess of this book. Honestly, they fucked so many more times after this. Like, I don't even remember what happens in this scene. I was like,
yeah.
I don't know. That's just my personal.
Oh, and we also get the blue balls joke.
Oh yeah. I'm like,
yeah,
we can do that in the morning.
It is, very low hanging fruit.
Indeed. But yeah, that's just my take. And just y'all know, longtime listeners know that I'm a big advocate of like a healthy balance of like sending message that love is not all sex. That's just me. That's just me.
Yeah, I get it. And maybe that would have made definitely like helped a little bit later on when we get like more love confessions, because later on in the book we get the obvious love confessions and everything, and I'm like, I didn't even know you liked him that much.
Yes.
So that I think would have helped, or like maybe breaking it up so like they do go to bed and they're just cuddling, and then I'm like, ooh, oh, he's soft and sensitive. Oh, he just became 10 times more attractive. And then maybe breaking it up to like the sex scene that happens in this chapter. Maybe like she wakes up in the middle of the night and she feels his erection. And then she's just like, hello.
Hard agree. No pun intended. Hard agree. Like, I think a morning, like after they wake up in the morning, like that would have been great. Like I would have been totally fine with that. But no. As soon as you hit the sack and you see boobies, you're like, oh, I can't. I have to motorboat. I have to mate. I'm like, man, you set the precedent.
Yeah. So chapter 14 to 15, again, we can kind of just bring into two parts together. And this is also right before the beginning of part 3. So Rahash wakes up and remembers last night, and he gets hard again because he's like, hell yeah, I want to do that again. And he wakes up Liz, and they go on their hunt. Liz talks to Rahash about her dad and human hunting techniques. And then again we get a repeat scene from the first book with the, what are they called? I call them the monkey things. We also get another Star Wars reference about an Ewok.
Yeah,
they're called appears.
They're called Metlaks, Metlaks, I believe.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But they get cornered by like Metlaks because they're looking over this like little cliff area into this valley, and there was like some prey there, but then this baby Metlak like shows up right next to Liz, and Rahash tells her to run when he tells her to, and that is the end of part 2. I believe, are we ending there, or do we have one more part before the end of this episode?
No, that's it.
All right. Well, we will leave you with that cliffhanger, listeners. Will Rahash
literally
and Liz live to fuck again?
Literally, guess it. Literally, it's a legit cliffhanger.
It is a legit cliffhanger.
Yeah,
they're on a cliff. Will they live to fuck again? Will we get more Star Wars references that are unneeded? Will we ever find out if Georgie gets more or less annoying? Tune in next week. Same bat time, same bat place.
Hey guys, it's
Hello.
me, your producer. I have questions.
Yes. Fire away.
How do you feel about the trope of virginity in this book being flipped? So instead of Liz being the virgin, Rahash is.
You go first.
It's complicated for me personally, because virginity is a concept made up by a society.
Society. Yeah.
Society. We live in a society. But like virginity in women is just more stigmatized because it's like the quote unquote, like, I hate to say it this way, but like the freshness seal, or your Ashlyn is literally throwing up. Or like your purity, and you're supposed to say that from one husband. So when it's a man, it doesn't gross me out as much. I'm still not in love with the I'm your first and only trope. But I'm less bothered when it comes to a man. But that is because virginity is more created to confine women. So that's like, it didn't bother me per se, but it's like not my favorite.
Mm-hmm. I was actually going to say very similar thing. Are we resonating tonight? Are we, you know, I was gonna say, purr. I was I was gonna say the same thing. I think overall as a trope, fixating on virginity for either partner does not appeal to me for the same reasons that Sydney just explained. However, if it's going to be in a book, I would much prefer it be attached to, if it's a heteronormative relationship, the male partner. In this case specifically, there were moments, particularly in the second half, actually. The first part didn't bother me as much. The second half where I like ticked an eyebrow a bit, you know, because I'd read comments about Rahash being a little, like, I think it was a lot of like infantilization at times. Not quite, but you know, there were some like dialogues around like, oh, he doesn't know how to love, and he doesn't have these experiences, and therefore he's a sweet little innocent thing. And I'm like, well, he does
he's not
wild animals. Yeah, like I don't know if that's what I would.
He is a literal warrior, and he does talk about how his dick is bigger than everybody else's.
Exactly. I think he's doing fine, sweetie. You know, but I will say though, I wasn't bothered by it as much as I expected to be. So I don't think this story was egregious in its handling of this trope. But who knows if the tables were turned and it was Liz. Now I'm doing it. Liz.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. If it was Liz who you know happened to define herself as a virgin coming into this, I would be very curious to see how that would have been handled. But the world may never know.
I think on top of it too, what changes it is that in the Sakui like societal system, it doesn't seem like there is necessarily a shame around not having a partner, because there are so many like there's not as many females, not as many women, only so few can have sexual experiences. So I think that also changes up the context of him having had experience before.
That's a very good point. There's not this like fixation on his virginity because of that, at least from anyone outside of Liz. And even with her, it doesn't feel quite like a fixation. So
yeah, because she's like, oh, so he it's just because there's not a lot of women to go around. So he just wasn't one of the lucky ones who had a lover or has had a mate before.
You know what? The last thing I'll say on this, I just remembered, you know what would have made it bad for me is if Liz had made a comment at any point being like, I'm glad to have been his first and only, or like, I want to be his first. Yeah. Because that to me is where we start dipping into that like purity culture concept. That would make me uncomfortable.
When you got grossed out with the mister.
Oh.
You remember?
Don't remind me.
I'm sorry.
Don't remind me.
I hate to tell you, Lauren.
I needed therapy for that book alone.
Okay.
Whose POV do you like better?
Rosh. Sorry, I was so quick.
I'll also say Rahash. But that's just because Liv's internal dialogue can be annoying, and I hated her mentioning the cootie thing.
God, yes. Yeah. I didn't even love, I will say for me, there were times when I preferred Liz's, and that was in the second half when Rahash, without spoiling too much, starts getting really deep in his like insecurities of like, I'm unlovable, I'm anxious about her well-being, blah, blah, blah. Because that did get a little old after a while. And like, as someone that would hate having a partner personally that had those insecurities like 24/7, I don't think it was not appealing to me. I would grow so weary of it. But for the most part, and especially in part one, yes, Rahash was better to read for me.
Yeah, I'll definitely agree with that. Because Rahash, I liked knowing what he was internally thinking. And I guess I just like Sakui men because it just, they are dream men. Like they actually care about their partners and their sexual well-being.
to such a degree that they would whisk them away to caves. You know.
At this point, are you rooting for them?
Okay, at this point, no. And literally the next couple chapters, yes.
Interesting. Why do you say that?
Because they still haven't talked. Like, they haven't, like, at this point, Rahash has been the only one that's kind of shown any development in, like, understanding that Liz needs needs some control and needs something to do, and that she's not just gonna be a good little cave wife. But Liz is just now starting to be like, okay, he's not as ignorant or bad or whatever than I thought he was. But literally in the next couple chapters, I would have said yes. But as of like this, like where we're at this point, it just kind of feels like a little bit of a ripoff of like Georgie and Bechtel, a little bit.
Intriguing. I was actually going to say yes, that I was rooting for them at this point. My reasons are a little less thought out, I think, and superficial. Like, mine feel very like superficial in the sense of, I think from jump, I did recognize that they would eventually be good together, simply because of like the whole Rahash has always felt like an outcast. He's a hunter. Never really, like, no one has viewed him as attractive, at least in his eyes. And, you know, he's like stubborn. I obviously, like, Liz mirrors a lot of those qualities. And we've read so many opposites attract stories on this podcast that it was actually kind of interesting to see in Enemies to Lovers where they were kind of the same person, or at least very similar.
True.
And I was very intrigued by that. And I was like, wow, I actually can sense how they would be really compatible eventually. And I think that was the main driving force behind my rooting for them. And I will not lie, after the last steamy scene that they had together, I audibly put the book down and I just like said to no one out loud, I was like, just fuck already. So yeah, yes, I was.
Okay. Usually I'm the stickler, but you're the stickler, but
listen, I've been negative Nelly this whole podcast so far. I got to be nice at some point.
Me? No more questions? All right. Well, I know it's sad, but hey,
when Ashlyn talks dirty to us, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
And with that, we are going to close the episode here, folks. Thank you for listening to part 1 of Barbarian Alien by Ruby Dixon. Come join us for the next installment, which will be part 2, where we'll go over the rest of the book and our last reviews. You can go follow us on Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, and you can listen to us wherever you listen to podcasts. Except, remember, folks, but Google Podcasts is going away, so you won't be able to listen to us there anymore, but you can find us possibly on YouTube Music. We'll figure it out. But yeah, go follow us on our socials. And with that, we will say good night to you.
Got one.
Lauren's got one. Go ahead, Lauren.
Good night to all of you kinky cooies.
Join us in 2 weeks for our next episode of Barbarian Alien by Ruby Dixon, where we will discuss our final thoughts on the book.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Raunchy Power Hour. Find us on Instagram and Twitter at the RPH Podcast. Send us book recs to our email, raunchypowerhour@gmail.com, or at the link in our bio on any of our socials. As always, stay raunchy.